I'm not a Brewers fan, but I try to feel the same feelings they have today as the Mets knock them out of the playoffs. We're going to talk about the remaining 8 teams with Adnan Virk. We'll run through all of them. Little hockey preview. And we've got a new book from our guy, Josh Brown, who you see on CNBC, who's a fund manager. It's just about investing, and it's a really good book. It's fun, so we're going to talk about that book, and then he's going to stick around doing financial life advice. And speaking of your finances, we've got some picks for you. The Alliance and Couch Money Research. Baseball, I am back. I am all the way back. I'm in. It's one of the best products in all of sports. When the MLB playoffs start, I am excited. On Wednesday, I watched the majority of those 4 games. And last night, we had 1 game. And when I look at the playoffs, I'm like, this is one of the best things that we could have in sports. But if you're a Brewers fan this morning, what you went through last night doesn't feel like the best anything today. You blew a 2-0 lead in the top of the 9th. The Pete Alonso home run. Mets tacked on another one a little bit later. Double play. Your season is over at home. You put in 6 months of games almost every single day. 7.5 months if you're into pitchers and catchers reporting, and even longer if you're into the Hot Stove League, which was my favorite league in all of sports for many years. Brewers fans, you won 93 games this year. You had the 3rd best run differential in the entire sport. You were 5th in team ERA. You had a 20-year-old future star in Jackson Chourio, hit 2 home runs in game 2, lived up to the hype all season long. And last night, a closer that had given up 3 runs all season gave up 4 runs in 2/3 of an inning after the Mets had gone 19 straight plate appearances without a hit. 6 months over in 3 days because an awesome reliever couldn't get it done. For Brewers fans, it may seem like not a great investment of time. You're going to remember the Pete Alonso home run for the rest of your life. Real sickos will remember the leadoff walk to Lindor. The same way I remember to boo Tim Sheeta for like 13 years at Fenway Park after the phantom tag in the playoffs against the Yankees in 1999. It's why years later, I was still pissed about the MLB format in the new expanded wild card in 1995, where you had the Red Sox playing Cleveland as the 1-2, despite the fact Cleveland won 100 games. The Red Sox won the 2nd most games in the American League, and 2 79-win teams, Seattle and New York, played each other on the other side of the bracket in the American League. Like, this is stupid. For years, I was on construction sites being like, it's really dumb. By the way, the Cleveland team was so much better than everybody else in the American League. And yes, 79 wins, 144-game season that year. But it didn't make any sense as it was leading up to it. Like, what's the format? So the 2 best teams are going to play each other because a division winner can't play a wild card team within their own division. And then there's some annual seeding turnover. Why can't Cleveland just play the Yankees and the Red Sox play Seattle? No, that doesn't make any sense. Look, it was 1995, and I still remember all. Look, it's why when Bob Stanley, the steamer, who, for you younger listeners, caused great emotional distress to many a Red Sox fan in 1986. But when Bob Stanley was on a minor league staff, when I was working in the minors 20 years ago, I was back in the visitors clubhouse and he asked me to move his car and I didn't. Yes, I know that's weird. But baseball death is just different than other sports. And in Milwaukee right now, you don't even know what to do with yourself. The NBA, you kind of see it happening as the shot goes in. It is sudden, right? The NFL, it's usually the culmination of a long drive, or maybe it's the culmination of a field goal after moving the chains enough to get into position. You can kind of see it happening. Hockey playoff death is like being shot and not knowing if you've been shot. Some cases, you've been shot. I've never been shot. I hope to never be shot. But I think you read enough about it. Like sometimes you're like, what was that? You're like, you've been shot. And then you go back and look at the Stanley Cup final replay and you're like, oh, that's how that went in. And it's so sudden. You don't even know. There's like a moment with hockey endings where you don't even know it's over yet. Pete Alonso's home run's a little different. It's like watching a pet about to be hit by a car. You hope the angle's off. You kind of like duck down and you look And yeah, I get it as pet owners. You're like, this is the analogy you came up with? Yeah, I did. Because it's supposed to be something that sucks. That's terrible. That you're never going to forget. But you're just like, is the angle, is it too low? Oh, this sucks. I can't tell you that it's going to go away because it won't. It's never going to go away, especially for a Brewers franchise that's one of the 5 teams in baseball that's never won a World Series. The last time they were in a World Series was 40 plus years ago, and they were in the American League. So it's not going to go away because it's not like after a breakup where all your relatives are telling you, hey, time heals all wounds, because you're going to get back together next year and every year after that. There's no break. You're never going to see the Brewers with another guy because you are always going to be the other guy. So I know today is sad, but we'll see you in Phoenix. Let's do it. Adnan Virk is here. MLB Network playoff time. Hockey season right around the corner. Will we have enough time? I don't think so. What's up?
Ryan, it's great to see you as always. Listen, let me start with this. In a decade plus of wonderful friendship with Steve Ceruti, he's never called me. He's never called me when him and Maddie were getting married. Never called me after I was named the MVP of the wedding, much to the chagrin of Will Kane. He's never called me when Marlo was coming. But yesterday he called me. And I said, okay, there's 2 things here. Either one, someone's died who's close to us, so I don't want to answer the phone, or more than likely it's a pocket dial / butt dial. Neither. Ceruti immediately texts, does not leave a voicemail, goes, hey, I know we wanted to get you on at some point, October baseball. Can we get you on tomorrow? So first things first, who canceled? I'm thrilled to be here, but I want to know what happened, because Ceruti's on the ball here. There's no way he would have called me the day before unless somebody canceled. Is
Jeff
everybody
Passan.
okay?
Jeff Passan can do it.
I like that it was Passan. Secondly, the last time I was here, I told you my story about the Emmys. Let me quickly tell you that, and we'll talk all the baseball and hockey that you want.
That's where I was going to start, so I'm glad.
Okay. Perfect. So as I said to you before, I'm like, hey, did Van Pelt change his number? You're like, nope. I go, okay, just not responding to my text. That's fine. I had sent him a text. Congrats on the Emmy nomination. Look forward to seeing you. I see him there. He's a few rows down from me. And I said, well, if we win, I can, tap him on the shoulder. I don't believe you've ever been to the Emmys, Ryan. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. We're 43 of 44 categories. Outstanding studio show daily is MLB Tonight. As we were filing in, I'm like, oh my God, it's Joe Buck. Like, I am a massive Joe. Ceruti knows this. I'm a massive Joe Buck guy. So I went over, like, I just got to say hello. Michelle Beisner, his wife and talented reporter, kind of gives a look at recognition. Like, that's a good sign. She knows who I am. And Joe, big warm handshake. Hey, man, you do a fantastic job. I'm like, oh, the night's made. Joe Buck. Yeah! I love Joe Buck. Then I see Ian Eagle. Ian Eagle says, hey, I mean, you really know your movies. I'm like, okay, so this guy actually knows who I am. This is also a good sign. As I walk in, it gets even better, just for you and me. Dave Roberts, right there. I'm like, hey, Dave Roberts. And for those confused right now, not the Dodgers manager, but the guy who ran ESPN Audio when Ryan and I were there, and now he's a very prominent executive. He introduced me to his wife, Tierica. She's very nice. I tell Tierica, I go, listen, this guy was the boss on radio, and he was so funny because he would take me to Brico's in West Hartford. He'd take me out for lunch or dinner, and he would just annihilate all of our coworkers. And he started laughing. Like, he's agreeing. He knows this is true. I go, it was hysterical. He would bash everybody. I'm sure he's killing me. But I said, I appreciate the meals. I appreciate the feedback. He said, it's great to see you, blah, blah, blah. We get to the category at Sitting Studio Show Daily, and it's the Kid Merrill who's announcing it. So the nominees are.
He didn't seem super locked in on some of the clips I saw of him emceeing.
Yes. So the nominees are to do it. And then you're supposed to say, and the Emmy goes to. However, he botches it. It wasn't quite a Moonlight situation, but he goes, and the MLB goes to. Well, we're the only one nominated for Major League Baseball. We're up against 4 ESPN shows: SportsCenter, NBA Countdown, NFL Live, PTI. And the MLB goes to. Yeah. Rivals come like, we've done it. And he's making fun of me. He looks at me and goes, yeah, MLB Tonight. I'm like, let's go. My boss, Mark Kyle, and I high five. And then I slam Van Pelt on the way to the podium. Because I think it's something. I give him a big little friendly.
He must
Joe
have
Buck,
loved that.
unfortunately, has left because Joe Buck's category was 2 previous. As soon as he lost, he bolted. I'm like, all right, well, I would have given Joe Buck a high five. That's fine. We get up there. Obviously, Mark Kyle, my boss, gives a great speech, very gracious. Rinaldi's beaming at me front row. I'm just staring at Rinaldi's choppers the entire time. It was amazing. It was an epic night. We win. We go backstage. We're taking pictures. We're floating on air. and it was awesome. So I don't know if I'll ever go again. That was my moonlight moment, but I'm thrilled to announce that MLB Tonight did indeed win at Standing Studio Show Daily. Triumphant night for us all. And then, by the way, in the bar afterwards, I see Jason Kelsey. And our producer, Ian's a massive Eagles guy. He goes, look, it's Jason Kelsey. But we're going to go talk to Jason Kelsey. So, nice conversation with Jason Kelsey. It was awesome.
Van Pelt did change his number.
Correct. So what happened is the next morning, Van Pelt texts me and goes, hey, there was a lot of joy up there on that stage. So happy for you, man. I'm like, oh, Scotty, it means the world coming from you. We exchanged complimentary texts. And then after he threw out the first pitch for the Orioles game 1, I texted him yesterday. And he goes, thanks. And then immediately later, it's a new cell. Exactly what you just said. It goes, hey, guys, new number for SVP. Thanks for all the kind words about the Orioles. Very cool that he got to throw out the first pitch. And the best part of it was he did the wind-up in homage to the great Jim Palmer. And I said, if it really was an homage to Jim Palmer, he would have thrown the first pitch in his underwear. Because you remember those Jim Palmer jockey ads when he was at the height of his fame. That truly would have been the best homage possible, but still very cool. Van Pelt threw the first pitch. I wish his offense had shown up. Unfortunately, not the case.
No, not a great. They hit 167 in 2 games against the Royals. Maybe it's their pitching. But we have to talk moving forward about A topics, A segments, and C to D segments. Like, this would have been a great way to wrap it up. Because now,
well, that's the thing. Because as he said at the game, are we going to have enough time? I said, okay, if he's going to squeeze me at the end, I'll lead with it, and whatever else he wants, it's fine.
Thanks for allowing us that. But I don't know if we'll have any time for hockey. Okay, here's the deal. Last night, incredible win for the Mets.
Yeah.
It just seems so cruel for 6 months and then 3 days it's all over. I don't want to do fixed baseball topics with you because this is the moment in time we should be celebrating baseball. This is a season where we had 0 teams win 100 games the first time since 2014. That can be maybe a little fluky, or it can feel like anybody has a chance. But do the Mets have a real chance?
I don't think so, but I'd rather focus on the micro rather than the macro. I want to focus on last night's win. Pete Alonso, I love, and he was struggling mightily going into that at bat. I mean, he had 5 singles over the last 2 weeks. We had Joel Sherman on MLB Tonight. I did the pregame show going into the game, and Joel's saying, he's like, are we going to go the entire year without him having a major hit? He goes, he hasn't had a big hit since April 6th. That's how long it's been. 5 for 35 over his last 11 games of the regular season, all hit singles, had not homered in 49 plate appearances going in. So if the moment was ever now was the time for Polar Pete, who was ready to play perhaps his final game as a Met. And I was with Carlos Pena and Jake Peavy. Of course, Pena, the former home run champion, was in the World Series previously with the Rays. Jake Peavy's a Cy Young Award winner, World Series champion. And they both said to me last night on MLB Network, Devin Williams loves to throw the changeup, and the Mets were the best team in baseball against the changeup. So you go to that at-bat. Lindor, first off, terrific at-bat, waiting for his pitch, eventually reaches. Vientos is out, but then Brandon Nimmo reaches at the base hit, and then you get to Alonso. 3-1 count, and those balls missed badly. So it wasn't like Devin Williams was around there. He had to come in with the changeup. He does so, fat part of the plate, and Pete crushes it. And I was so happy for him. He hit into a double play earlier, almost, tripped over his own bat. He missed a pop-up in the 8th, which could have been catastrophic. Because at that point, it was already a 2-run game. If Edwin Diaz had given up more runs, could you imagine how Alonso would have felt? The look at his face when he dropped that pop-up, I said, man, just want to give this guy a hug. You could tell he wanted to find some hole to crawl into. So for him to hit that 3-run shot, that moment was absolutely epic. I was thrilled for Pete. Years ago, I met him at the BBWAA, Baseball Writers Association Awards dinner. And me and my oldest son, Yusuf, who this was 2019. Yusuf was 10. And when I met Pete, I said, this is my son. I want to say hello. And I said, listen, he's struggling with velo. In Connecticut, he was an all-star, quite frankly. In New Jersey, he's struggling. He's struggling with velo. What can he do? And Pete Alonso, let me missing a beat, goes, lift weights. And I wanted to be like, he's 10. But that's Pete Alonso's advice. Hit the squat rack. That will help you get better. I'm like, okay, he's going to give up baseball in a few years, but thanks, Pete. Which makes me think, by the way, as an aside, the best story I've ever heard about youth and a comment like that was you to Dave Ceruti, Oberman's guy, longtime coordinating producer when you were filling in for KO. Ceruti says to you, I'm showing my kids some schools for touring around. And you said, oh, what college is he thinking of? And his response was, he's 6. Regardless, Alonso is a great dude. It was a massive home run. And props to Carlos Mendoza, who brought in Edwin Diaz in the 7th. He was not messing around, brought him in a key spot. David Peterson comes in the 9th. Double play Lindor, Mets win. Do I think they have what it takes to go all the way? No, I don't. But I think this is an amazing story and one hell of a week in Mets history. Look at Monday. Lindor carried them in that game against the Braves as they got into the playoffs. Who knows how much farther they can go? I think it's Phillies in 6, but I give props to the Amazons.
I just used to always, and look, this has been different now for years, so it's not new. But like the Severino story, like he was special. What in 17? He was good in 18, but the Yankees thought they had the ace of a staff for 10 years, and then he's in the other part of town now, and he's not peak Yankee Severino, but I don't know if Manaea's enough. Quintana was terrific last night, and he's been awesome for a month here.
Yeah.
I'm kind of with you though. When I look at the landscape of the National League, I like the Padres. Phillies are probably the best team, but I feel like I'm going with a timely, like what their GM Preller does, and just all in over and over and over again. The way he's just willing to do anything to try to find a way. I love the team. I love their lineup. And look, King, their starter, who they got in the Soto trade, look, the Yankees are giving up a really nice prospect, starting pitcher for arguably one of the 3 or 4 best hitters in all of baseball. It's a pretty easy transaction to pull off. But when I start looking around, I probably should pick the Phillies because this is the most complete team maybe of the last 3 years. But I want to see the Padres get out of the National League.
So the majority of people, MLB Network, when we had to make our predictions, I think almost all of us have Padres, Dodgers, NLDS, and the majority of us have the Padres winning, which you go, hang on a second. The Dodgers have the most wins in the regular season. They've got Ohtani, Betts, and Freeman. They spent over $1 billion in the offseason between Ohtani, Yamamoto, and traded for Glass now, who unfortunately is hurt. And you're telling me the Padres are the team to beat, and all of us agree with you. And the reason why is you mentioned the pitching. It's certainly superior. King's two-seamer is unbelievable. The way that he's able to use that pitch. I thought he had the best pitching performance of anyone so far in the playoffs, even including Tarek Skubal, who might be the best pitcher going for the Tigers. But the Musgrove injury does hurt. I don't know the severity of that. Hopefully he's going to be okay. I believe it might be bone chips or spurs, something like that. It's no ligament damage. That's a good news. Hopefully he's okay. But they'll have Dylan Cease. They'll have Yu Darvish available. I love their bullpen because Suarez is the closer. Adam, Tanner Scott, lefty, him versus Ohtani is going to be a great matchup. And offensively, Nando's unbelievable come playoff time. He's got one of the highest OPSs of any Padre, 25 plate appearances. You can't get him out right now. He hits a home run that game 1. Game 2 shows off his speed, how electric he is. Machado had a big hit. Jackson Merrill, the rookie who doesn't play like a rookie, had a big hit. So I'm with you. I think the Padres are the better team than the Dodgers. I think they win that series in 5. LA certainly has more star power. It wouldn't surprise me if Ohtani, Betts, and Freeman rake. But I have a lot of questions about LA after that pitching staff. Flaherty has been a godsend for them. He's going to start game 1. He was a critical trade deadline acquisition by Andrew Friedman and company. But I got questions. Yamamoto pitched well when he came back, but he was out for months. I don't know how much more he can give them. JP Morosi gave us this stat. In the last 15 Dodgers games, there has not been one out recorded by the starter in the 6th inning. So they are a true 5-and-dive team. And their bullpen's okay, but I think San Diego has the edge in the bullpen. Buehler, 2-time Tommy John guy, has struggled mightily this season. Landon Knack's a rookie. Obviously, Kershaw's not available. Gavin Stone's not available. So I'm with you. I think LA's got more star power, and their top of the lineup is incredible. But I like the depth of San Diego more. I still have the Phillies coming out of the NL because I think they are the best team, top to bottom, if I look at their starters, relievers, and their lineup. But I'm with you. I wouldn't be shocked if San Diego makes it to the World Series and wins their first one ever.
Yeah, the Dodgers pitching staff, we were worried about it in spring training. They add the extra pieces, but Yamamoto has not been the same guy. Glasnow being hurt is the least surprising thing ever. And then the other 5 guys. So, like, you're looking at the depth going, how could they have 9 starters potentially like this? This has to be the most insurance a team has ever had. They didn't care how much they were spending. And yet here we are in October, and it's still not working despite all of the different arm options that we knew. The reality was, like, a few of these are damaged goods, but and by the way, the other weird thing, like, you look at them last year and you go, oh, it's the pitching problem again. They scored 6 runs against Arizona in that series. Yeah. So, and that's the randomness of the bats just shutting down for any team in the playoffs. But that was more the case the last couple playoff exits for the Dodgers than it was about all the pitching stuff. All right. So sell me on Philly. Do you agree this is the best version of this team in the last 3 years?
Yeah, Bryce Harper's never won a World Series. He obviously had a very good season. He wasn't great by Bryce's standards. He's a 2-time MVP. Obviously, he's had better seasons, but I think that clearly the moment is now, and he's always been a guy that steps up. Schwarber had an unbelievable season. As far as leadoff hitters are concerned, the amount of home runs and RBI he hit is kind of laughable because you don't expect that of a leadoff hitter. He's very atypical in that respect. I think Trey Turner was much better this second season, but really it's their pitching staff that I love. I mean, Zach Wheeler, to me, if it's not for Chris Sale, Wheeler's going to win the Cy Young. He's come close before. He should have won against Corbin Burns years ago, but Burns got him. as far as winning the award. But Aaron Nola's a great postseason pitcher. Like his regular season numbers are like, high threes, low fours ERA. In the postseason, he's 2.5. He's a different player. Ranger Suarez wasn't as good down the stretch. I think Christopher Sanchez, though, is great. So to me, there's your three strong starters. And bullpen-wise, Jeff Hoffman's been good. They've improved. Jose Alvarado's been really good for them. So I think they've improved from years past. And again, I just look at the length of their lineup. I think top to bottom, they don't really have any weaknesses. And they've got some good role players as well, the likes of Brandon Marsh. Even Cody Clemens has had some pinch hit home runs for them. Like, to me, Philadelphia is a great team. I will say, Ryan, they were great in terms of being at home. And you thought for a team like that, hey, Citizens Bank Park, that'll be a really big advantage. However, last season, they were up 3-2, went home, and they gagged against Arizona. They lost that game 6 and 7. So I hope they learned from that from a year ago. But I do think just they have the most depth, like I said, top to bottom.
All right, so are you picking San Diego to come out of the National League?
No, I'm going to pick the Phillies. I'm calling Phillies over the Mets in 6. I got in 5, and I got the Padres over the Dodgers in 5.
I know I'm supposed to go with the better teams here, but I think this Tarek Skubal story is incredible. Detroit's story is incredible. I mean, they trade Jack Flaherty, and it's like, all right, the team's not going to be any good. And now we're looking at Skubal as potentially, is he the best pitcher in baseball? Because you really have to go back to last year. He only pitched 80 innings, but last year is when we saw the signs of what he could be. And now, and I was watching you guys on MLB Network, and somebody was breaking it down and going through the whole thing. I almost feel like you have to be dominant for like a couple years to have the belt of best in the game. But as far as like whatever the last 80 innings of last year and then the entire season of this year, the guy's a completely different dude and he's unhittable.
Yeah, he's been incredible. And I'm with you. I like to have some more durability. Like, I don't want to just have one season and say all of a sudden this guy's the best. Like, I'd rather give consideration to somebody who's been doing it for longer, like a Zach Wheeler for me. If I said, okay, the last few years he's been the best pitcher, or Corbin Burns perhaps, and Garrett Cole. But I'm with you. If I just looked at this season, Tarek Skubal was the best starting pitcher in baseball, throws every pitch for strikes, has an edge to him. He's nasty out there. And the Tigers formula is interesting because essentially it's when Skubal pitches, it's win day, and the rest of the days, let's just figure it out with our relievers. They've roared into contention because going back to July 25th, their relievers have a 2.87 ERA. That was the day after Jack Flaherty's final start with the Tigers. They thought they were done. They're trading Flaherty. We're punting on the season. Instead, their bullpen's been unbelievable. And that's the way they've done it. It's Skubal's a win day, and then the other day we'll just throw a bunch of arms at you. They had 7 different guys combined in that game to in a true bullpen game. And this only the 2018 Rays, who popularized the whole concept of the opener, have had more relief appearances of at least 4 outs than this year's Tigers team. So in that wildcard series, no Tigers pitcher faced the same Astro twice. Literally 1 inning, 1 1/3, 1 2/3. That's it. Next man up. And that's what AJ Hinch is going to do. I personally, Ryan, don't think it's sustainable. I think you can do that over a brief period of time, which they have done. For 6 weeks, you could throw a bunch of different options. You can have 7 different guys start and finish a game. But if one of those guys in the chain link fence falters, then all of a sudden the whole strategy comes unglued. And the Guardians, by the way, are going to give them a taste of their own medicine because they've got the best bullpen in baseball, 2.57 ERA. That's a full run better than 25 Major League Baseball teams. They got 4 pitchers who threw 65 or more innings with an ERA below 2. That's tied with the 1917 White Sox for the most ever. Cade Smith, Hunter Gaddis, Tim Herron, Emmanuel Clase. So Detroit's been a wonderful story. I'm with you. Skubal's an absolute stud. But I think Detroit's going to get a taste of their own medicine when it comes to great bullpens, and I've got Cleveland winning. And Tanner Bybee, by the way, is the rotation rock of this team. He had 31 starts, 173 innings. I'm not saying he's Skubal, but I think he's going to be good for them in Game 1. And ultimately, the Guardians, 50 home wins, most of the American League this year. I'm picking them. But you're right. Detroit's been a great story, no doubt.
Yeah, Cleveland is another one when I start looking at the offenses because, you can look at Detroit's the 300 OBP for the year. I think Riley Green led him in home runs with 18. And you're going, okay, you're going to need, that's what I like about San Diego is I think they can do a bunch of different things offensively. Finally, my guy, Jurickson Profar, all the years, all the faith, it finally was repaid this year on top of everything else. I just think San Diego can be active and aggressive and find ways to score runs. And then they can clear the bases with Tatis or Machado. It's just, they have a couple different ways they can get you. So when I start looking at the American League lineups, you can tear them all apart besides New York. And look, I've not liked the AL Central for a long time because I always thought it was so bad. It propped up the records. And then if you look historically year to year, how the AL Central teams did once we got into the playoffs, oh, hey, they're gone again. So now in theory, you have 3 that are still alive, but I worry about Detroit's offense and then the rest of the rotation out of their number 1. I could say the same thing about Cleveland's rotation because whatever the plan was at the beginning of the year, it's almost like Dodgers light. But that bullpen, which is normally something I look for with postseason success, I mean, like I have that many guys that are that good at the back end that can miss bats. Like that's crazy. So maybe I should go with them. But then when you look at where they are in runs, they're 14th. That like the starting rotation was 23rd, and then you have a Kansas City team that with Lugo and Reagan's, it's like, okay, I feel a little bit better about the depth at the top of the rotation, but I think they were below 500 in their season that didn't involve the Chicago White Sox. So you have all these AL Central teams again, where it's like, hey, look at the depth of the division. Look how good. I just don't know. I mean, look, it's the randomness of baseball, but when we're talking lineups and the scare factor, there's just not much to compare with what we've had from Judge and Soto with the Yankees.
Yeah, I agree with you on the skepticism about the AL Central, because if you look at their numbers against the White Sox, that's where they made, the worst team in baseball history. And look at each of those three teams you mentioned. I think the Royals went 12-1 against the White Sox. If you remove Chicago from the equation, right, it's a completely different team. So I'm with you. I don't think it besmirches what they've done. I give them credit. As you said, it's the randomness of baseball. The Royals went from 106 losses a season to go to 76 losses. That's a 30-win improvement. That's gigantic. I give them props, absolutely. But are they as good as the Yankees? Of course they're not. Could they win the series? Of course they could. As you said, it is baseball. And the starting pitching is the strength of their team. They were second in starters ERA behind only the Mariners. They were second in starter innings. You mentioned Reagan's and Lugo. Michael Wacha is going to start game 3. Brady Singer's had a much better season. Their bullpen's decent. But offensively, I'm with you. Bobby Witt's numbers in September, he hit .417. He's going to be the runner-up for MVP to Aaron Judge. The rest of the Royals lineup batted a combined 198. So Pasquantino was back, the pass watch. He's a good hitter. He's certainly banged up. They thought he wouldn't be back for 6 weeks. He's back after 4. He's still got literally stuff in his thumb, whatever metal fragments are in there.
Last week, I'm reading about him going, and then he's just out there.
Yeah.
And by the way, like beating the Orioles, the Orioles having nothing to offer at this stage of the season was maybe one of the most predictable things of anything we saw in the wild card round. Like when you were going through all of the things that were not working out for them towards the end, and I know that sounds like dismissive of Kansas City a little bit, not like the Royals are some powerhouse. I don't know. Going into that, I'm like, what? I don't even know what to expect from the Orioles at this stage.
No, I'm with you. Earlier in the year, I was hoping Orioles-Phillies rematch in the '83 World Series in 2 great ballparks. You can't find a better baseball venue than, right? Camden Yards is unbelievable. There's nothing better
than the Wire series.
I'm sorry?
Nothing.
No, it's fine. But yes, the Orioles fell apart. Their offense was dreadful. I love Rutschman. The final 2 months of the season, he was a disaster. Only Gunnar Henderson was really hitting. And Santander, by the way, 44 home runs. He's going to get paid somewhere. He's leaving. And Corbin Burns, their ace, he's going to get Garrett Cole money. He's going to get $300 million from the Mets. He's gone. So this thought that the Orioles will be a dynasty for years to come, I'm like, back-to-back playoff appearances. They completely folded come playoff time. They're going to lose their ace and one of their best power hitters. So there's going to be a year of transition for them as far as what remains to be seen. And Holiday obviously did not have a good rookie season. To your point on the Royals, again, Bobby Witt's great. Pasquantino's there. Sal Perez. You've got 3 decent hitters there. But the Yankees should win. I mean, if you're a Yankee fan, God, you'll be appalled if they don't make the World Series. No Astros, who have been their nemesis, and no Orioles, who had a better head-to-head record against them in the regular season. I'm not saying it's preordained, but you cannot find an easier path to the Yankees than Royals, Guardians, Tigers.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. By the way, when you guys, can I offer up a nickname for highlights?
Please.
Santander. We call them bank fees because they always sneak up on you.
That's good. I thought you were just going to play on words like Santander the salamander, but I like that better. Bank fees because they sneak up on you. Okay, we can use it.
Yeah. Whatever.
No,
well,
listen,
if anybody throws at him and he gets into a fight, and you'd be like, we call him bank fees because he's always charging them out.
I like that's pretty good.
All right, so if it happens,
okay, I want to use that on Jesse Winker because last night he was so fired up when he slammed his helmet, broke his helmet. It was one of the most ridiculous celebrations I've seen in a while. I mean, Willie Adames chirping.
I got to watch that one again because I got to tell you, I didn't love it the first couple, so I may need to do a rewatch of like what was going on there. But you know what? Look, people give baseball a hard time. Let's talk about the passion. You know what I mean? So look, I'm with you on the Yankees thing. Like to put this Judge Soto season into perspective, I'm going to read you something that I saw from Baseball Reference.
Sure.
Because when I saw it, I was like, wow, this is a really big deal. If you look at Baseball Reference's batting runs above average metric, the 5 highest single season totals for teammates are 4 Lou Gehrig Babe Ruth seasons, and then this year of Judge and Soto.
Sheesh.
So the fact that, by the way, like, hey, Ruth Gehrig, underrated. I don't know that we need to do that 100 years later, but that they had the top 4, the 2 guys on the same team for 4 seasons, and no one else was even cracking that until what these 2 guys did. Look, I get the Yankees. We can go over the rotation questions. You could talk about the lack of depth in the lineup if you wanted to. Maybe the most important thing, the Yankees fans would be like, is my team just dumber than everybody else? Like, why do we make so many mistakes when it comes to base running? But I don't know how you look. Again, we get back to the randomness of baseball thing. I'm inclined to hope Cleveland finds a way with that bullpen and just kind of piecing it together in a better way than Detroit does. But the Yankees should be getting out of the American League.
No question. And to your point, love the callback to overrated, properly rated, underrated. Excellent segment of the Russillo show. But I think that in this case, yeah, Gehrig and Ruth probably underrated a little bit because those guys had some monster seasons. When you look at Soto and Judge, you just say, no one else has done this since Marison, Mansell, and Ruth and Gehrig. I mean, if you're a baseball nerd, you love the history of the game, and that's what they've done. Now, for Judge, I think it's fascinating, Ryan, because he's got some pressure here. In his previous postseason, 2022, after that record-setting 62 home runs, he had a .139, 184 on base, 306 slug in 9 games and 15 strikeouts. Furthermore, if you look at his postseason career, and this is no longer just a small sample size, there's over 70 plate appearances. He has struck out a third of the time. That's a high strikeout percentage, particularly much of the Yankees team. He hasn't fared well against the Astros. So I'm curious how Aaron Judge does. I'm a huge fan of his. I hope he has a monster postseason. But I will say in the past, he's had some holes. He's hit some home runs. His slug is decent, but his average and his on base much lower than it is in the regular season. As for Soto, it's his 3rd postseason, 29 career playoff games, 349 on base, 495 slug, 7 homers, 21 RBI in 29 games. He's obviously brought it as he did in 2019. And I think Garrett Cole is going to be great. 6-0, 1.71 ERA, 7 career ALDS starts. He was superb against the Orioles and the A's in his last 2 starts. 1 run allowed on 15 2/3. That's a .57 ERA. So I give the edge to Garrett Cole and the Yankees in Game 1 against Waka. And as you said, their offensive depth is much stronger. It's not just Judge and Soto, but it's a lot of Judge and Soto. Like, are they the heartbeat of the team? Of course they are. But Austin Wells had a good season as a cleanup. He's going to be top 3 for Rookie of the Year. Stanton's been a great postseason player. Gleyber Torres has been much better out of the leadoff spot. Volpe is good defensively. Like, they've got enough talent around Judge and Soto that they should win this thing.
I understand with the MVP voting in 24. I just want to put kind of Witt into perspective here. I mean, how many players in the American League do you think are actually better than him right now?
I think just Aaron Judge. Honestly, Ryan, that's it. Because Bobby Witt can do it all. He's a true 5-tool player. You know, I remember that contract that they signed, 11 years, $288 million. And again, there's 3 extra years that you could tack on to make it a total value of 14 years, $377. But he does it all. And, 30 home runs, 49 stolen bases a season ago. How much better could he be? He proved it this season. I mean, he literally carried that offense. As I said earlier, his September numbers versus the rest of the team, even in this playoff series, had the winning hit in Game 1, that infield single in Game 2, 4.14 seconds. He busted down the line. I'll take Bobby Witt. His WAR was second among all players. Even if you look at a guy like Juan Soto, Ryan, I'll take Bobby Witt because he's a better defender than Soto, playing a premium position of shortstop rather than right field, and he's a better base runner than Soto. Is Soto the better pure hitter? Absolutely. A little bit more selective. Obviously, he gets on base. But Witt has been unbelievable for the Royals, and the sky's the limit. I mean, to be this good in his 3rd season, I can't imagine much better he'll get.
Okay, final thoughts here. I'm not prepped for hockey yet. I'm just to be totally transparent.
Sure.
I'm not ready to go. Give us the 3 storylines in under 5 minutes that we need to know.
Well, I suppose nominally you're a Boston Bruins fan, although I've never heard you mention the Bees or support them. But New England guys, sure, we'll give it to you.
Well, hey, went to the playoffs last year against the Panthers. And I'll tell you from my scouting, I was right there, right behind the Panthers bench. Actually, not a great seat. Shout out to their equipment guy, one of the toughest workers I've ever seen at any sporting event in my entire life. But I saw the depth. I saw the speed. I saw the versatility of that Panthers, all of their offensive line changes. I'd be like, these guys are fucking on it. Like, that guy's good. Sammy Reinhart, I'm like, I want to hang out with that guy. I'd get a condo with him in Fort Lauderdale. 100%. Sight unseen. I'd go, wait, Sam wants to do something with me? I'm in. I don't care. I'll park in the carport and you can have the garage. Okay. So, yeah, I was invested. I was invested in it. And look, that Stanley Cup final, I found myself having to tape it so that I would like, it happens to me during the playoffs where I'm watching the NBA playoffs for my job.
Yeah.
And then I'll put the NHL playoffs up on another screen. I'm like, man, you're kind of watching that a little bit more than you need to be right now. So I was really into the playoffs last year.
Well, it sounds like Charles Barkley, who, as you know, even though he covers the NBA, is a massive hockey fan. My
we have a
friend
lot
Ben
of similarities.
Lyons was there working for Turner, and he said Barkley would walk in the green room and say, guys, let's put the Leafs game on. He wants to watch playoff hockey. He loves it. He was on the desk with Steve Levy, who Ceruti knows I'm a big fan of, and our friend. So, honestly, I think it was a great season last year. My 3 storylines to go back to the Bruins. The fact that Jeremy Swayman's not signed, I'm curious how that transpires. Him and Linus Ullmark were a great goalie tandem together. They trade Ullmark. Now they think Swayman's the guy, but they haven't signed him yet. So I'm curious how that will basically take care of business before opening night. McDavid and the Oilers, they finally break through, as you mentioned. They pushed to 7 games last year. He was unbelievable. He had a historic run, he and Draisaitl together. He's got great support with Zach Hyman and Evan Bouchard. Will Stuart Skinner be a good enough goaltender? That remains to be seen. And can Florida repeat? And they finally win the Stanley Cup, which was an amazing moment for Roy Bellamy and for Bill Lindsay and so many others. But can they do it again? Obviously, it's going to be a challenge for them. I think Vancouver's a really good team. I think that if Thatcher Demko's healthy, watch out for the Canucks. And I do think the Rangers are fearsome. When Igor Shesterkin is your goaltender and the amount of depth and talent they have up front, from Artemi Panarin to Alexis Lafreniere, who had a very good season, I think the Rangers could be poised for a big year. And, of course, I love my Flyers. Matvei Michkov, I think, is going to win the Calder. They got him over. They signed him. They drafted him a year ago. And Danny Briere, the Flyers GM, said, well, it's going to take a few years. No, after 1 year, whatever they had to do, they figured it out with the KHL, the Continental Hockey League. Michkov with the Flyers. They pushed last year for a playoff spot with a great coach in John Tortorella. Hopefully Philly gets in.
What about Connor Geekie for Tampa?
I haven't looked too much into Connor Geekie, but I think he's a good player. I think with Tampa, it's interesting, Ryan, they lost Stamkos. He signed with the Predators, 4-year, $32 million contract, but they also signed Jake Gensel. So I know some think, well, Tampa, they've fallen off a little bit. No, when you can replace Stamkos with Gensel, you still have Victor Hedman, you still have Andrei Vasilevsky. I think the Lightning are a playoff team and could do some damage.
Great stuff. We only have another hour of our taping window, so you want to promote what else you have for us?
Well, unfortunately, RIP to Cinephile. I want to thank all those who listened. 333 episodes. My dear friend Dan Lebitard called me in mid-March after the Oscars show and goes, listen, buddy, it's nothing against you. It's nothing against the podcast, but I can't renew your deal May 1st. I said, no problem, Dan. I thank you for the last 3 years. It's been an absolute blast. And shout out to Ceruti, who first gave me the idea of Maple Leafs and ranking my movies in Maple Leafs. But a great idea by Bimmel, who's the Meadowlark CEO. He said, you know what? If you want to keep the thing going, we can't pay you, but we'll give you a producer. We can still distribute it for you. I said, this is very generous of you. So my agent went to work trying to find a new home, and I had a blast. Got to work with a new producer, Harry Krinsky, who's unbelievable. We had a lot of fun together. And I ended up just reaching into my own Rolodex and getting people I'm a huge fan of. So Joe Buck came on Cinephile. Ian Eagle came on Cinephile. Keith Overman came on Cinephile. And my last guest was Bob Costas. So it was great to have a Mount Rushmore guest that came on with me. And again, I want to thank everyone who listened to Cinephile. 333 episodes. It was 5 months of doing it for free. My agent wasn't able to find a new home. I said, after 6 months, the universe is telling you they don't want to hear you bloviate anymore about movies. Take a hint. That's enough. Pull the plug. I got enough things busy in my life. I got 4 kids. I got 3 jobs. So it was a lot of fun. I want to thank everyone for supporting Cinephile. And most importantly, potential new gig. I thought I was done with podcasts. 8 years of Cinephile. I did the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi for 3 years, my NFL podcast. But an old friend of ours, I can't say too much yet, sadly, but a person you know well, Ceruti knows well, reached out to me for a potential new podcast. It's nothing to do with movies, but I could be back in the podcasting space within a matter of weeks. So stay tuned. Hopefully more good news to come.
John Seibel.
It's not John Seibel. Good guest, though. And thanks for your appearance, by the way, on Cinephile. Remember, you came on, you talked Manchester by the Sea, and you talked Fargo, one of our all-time favorites.
Still love those movies. Yeah, Manchester by the Sea. Good stuff. Good stuff. Always good to see you, my friend. And enjoy the playoffs and maybe, a little World Series update. All right?
Whatever you need, Ron. I'm happy to be here every 3 months or less, whatever you need. Good to see you. Keep on crushing it.
Thanks, buddy. Excited to have him back. Josh Brown, who is the CEO of Ritholtz Wealth Management. He's an author. You see him on CNBC all the time. That's why I learned about him. I was like, I kind of like this guy. He's just good on TV. He's got something to say. His blog blew up and turned into a career. And he's got a new book out that is out now. You weren't supposed to see that. What's up, man? It's good to see you.
Hey, Ryan. How you doing, man?
Okay, so Let's I really enjoyed this book for a bunch of different reasons. And maybe it helps that I've known you for years from afar on just television. I feel like you're very straightforward in a world that it's kind of hard to find that. And the premise and the format of this book plays really well because we're kind of jumping around and revisiting different points of the financial timeline. So when you went into kind of mapping this out, like this is just not a very straightforward book, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah, it's a little like Pulp Fiction. You'll jump around scenes, you'll jump around eras, but there is a through line, which is all of the people working in finance, all of the people that you see in the financial media, all of the opinion havers, all of the movers and shakers in the background, they're all just human beings, and they're all being driven by different incentives, most of which are not visible to the naked eye. And what I try to do is just humanize the experience of being a professional investor and tell you some behind the scenes things that I've seen happen and why they're relevant and how they will help you make better decisions once you understand that, this is no different than any other facet of life. The purpose of time shifting was so that we don't do this linear thing where it's like, and then it was Wednesday and this happened, and then it was Thursday. I wanted to make these points individually, and they required me to revisit different moments.
What I really think is important too is that if you look at just the last 4+ years, we have all sorts of historic movement in markets and how different they are in such a short amount of time. And I think it's really hard when you're up close to like that day to understand the perspective of what that means. But if you go to the market right before COVID and then wondering how it was going to be, I know how I felt as an investor, and then people just guessing. That's what I really despise, whether it was financial markets or just people deciding they were medical experts all of a sudden, just guessing on what all this stuff is. Like, what do you think have been some of the most important lessons, whether it's understanding corrections, understanding opportunities, and, on top of that, how the capital markets have changed so much in such a short amount of time?
So we are in an age where every day something unprecedented happens. And it's not always like this because I was around. I got Series 7 licensed in 1997. So I lived in the normal times and now in Mad Max times where, there was an unemployment report in April of 2020 that was so completely off the charts that the New York Times had to use the entire vertical stretch of the front page just to capture the bar, right? Like
Sure.
we went from 4% unemployment to 22% in 1 month. This has never happened before. It probably will never happen again. I can't imagine how it would ever happen again. And that is just the precursor to everything that went on. We had 9% inflation in the summer of 2022. We had the fastest bear market in history, down 20% in 6 days in March of 2020, and then the fastest bull market recovery ever a month later. Everything is like biggest, fastest, largest. And while this is happening, we've got companies that are publicly traded that are now worth $2 and $3 trillion. These are companies that are so dominant and so powerful globally. There's not even a government that can like literally do anything about the reach and the influence that they have. And so to live in as an unprecedented a moment as we are, and you're an investor, your job is to calculate probable outcomes and try to give your end investors a framework for where this is all going. If you're not leading with humility, you're kidding yourself, and it's going to wear really thin with the public. You've got to start from the standpoint of none of this has happened before. I can't possibly tell you specifically what A plus B is going to be C, but here is what I think, and here is why I think it, and we're going to put together a portfolio that's durable enough so that if my opinion is wrong, we're not going to take a knockout punch as a result.
I liked how you got into the PPP loans because I still don't understand it. I'd heard stories secondhand where, I think maybe the best way is to try to help the audience and even me too, because I'm just a very casual person when it comes to this stuff. But you go, okay, so basically it's everybody's money is free. So businesses, and you get into this kind of with Meta where there's all these companies going, well, the money's free, so let's just keep trying more and more ridiculous things that don't necessarily even turn a profit.
Yeah.
And then when you look at the amount of money that was just flooded in to try to help people through a time in need, but then you start looking at some of the PPP numbers, and like I said, you'll hear these secondhand stories. And you go, they didn't have to pay any of it back, and then you map all the numbers out there, like how much was it actually had to be paid back. But then you can kind of move all these pieces around. So then you just like, I'll just sit there and think like, when is that bill coming due? And then it's like, well, maybe the bill coming due was the rise in inflation, which is explainable of considering like, okay, now everybody still has money when it felt like nobody was going to have money.
Yeah.
So, okay, so, I'm like, okay, I follow that. I can understand that. And so now that's why we have interest rates. And depending on where you are, now you may think the economy is more screwed up because you were hoping to buy a home and you're still mad about these rates that may never come back. I guess there were just a bunch of markers that told me it was going to get bad again, and it just hasn't gotten bad again. Even if I felt like reading more made me worse at trying to figure it out.
We all paid the bill. The cumulative rise of prices over the last 4 years is on the order of 30%. And for some categories, it's like 100%. So
that's the bill. It's not the PPP loan. It's just it's the flush of money in everybody's hands.
I mean, do you pay fucking auto insurance? You need me to tell you that we paid right? Grocery, medical, price of college, apartment rent, we all paid it. And we happily paid it because everyone got a raise. Actually, the lower on the income scale you were, the more likely it was that you got a huge raise. So it was almost like a corrective thing. It's not all good. I don't mean to like paint this picture that, oh, let's do that again. But I want you to think about this. In the book, it took me weeks to do that chapter because I had to go to every government agency that was issued some sort of a relief from the Treasury. And then I had to add up all the money that came in the form of monetary policy stimulus from the Fed. And then I looked around the world, and basically, just U.S. alone is $21 trillion worth of stimulus, and that has a multiplier effect. When you put $21 trillion into the economy in the form of no interest rate loans, forgivable loans, aid packages for hotels, restaurants, Broadway, workers, employers, when you do that, that multiplier effect, that ripple outward, it's just endless amounts of spending. And here's a way to think about it. We gave 11 million PPP loans to business owners in this country, and only 10 million of them kept it. Only 1 million of them paid it back. Roughly, that's the number. So think about that. Now, these people were in many cases, not in all cases, of course. If you ran a Broadway theater, it wasn't so much fun for you. A lot of these businesses were operating just fine during the pandemic, and they had demand that was off the charts in many cases, but they were able to keep the loan. As long as they were legitimate businesses. If you were pretending you had a business, those are the people that went to jail. But if you legitimately had a company and you kept the money, nobody really asked you any questions. And I think that you combine that with all the stuff we did for workers, and you understand like why things were able to be held together. Here's the best analogy for you. In 2008, the government did this massive rescue of all the banks. And what they did was they bought the assets off their balance sheets from them. So in other words, think about it. You have a watch. The government says, all right, we'll buy your watch. Here's $200. Give us the watch. This time, they said, keep the watch, and here's $200. And also, here's $500. And 6 months later, actually, here's $1,000. And they didn't just do that for one group of people, like a farmer subsidy. They literally did it for anyone that was breathing got money. So that's the genesis of what you've seen go on in the last 4 years. That's why your neighbor has two boats, one for the weekends, one for the week, right? Like that's where we are today.
Yeah, and I'm glad it's a great analogy because it feels like the three stages like map out perfectly what you explain in the book. But when I say like bill coming due, it really depends kind of like on what your self-interest is at times, right? And there's a bunch of times where I've talked with other people about it, and you go, well, how can this happen? And it's not necessarily reflected in the stock market. Right?
It is.
You think so? Why is the stock market on fire if all of this stuff has happened?
I'm so glad you asked.
Right.
Companies,
okay, so there you go.
Because publicly traded companies are so good at raising prices It's almost obscene how talented they are. Chipotle, Netflix, United Health, none of these companies had any problem whatsoever raising prices year after year. And what are you going to do about it? Did anyone cancel Netflix like in real life? No. We know definitively their churn rate is as low as ever. People just continue to pay. It was $9, then it was $13, then it was $17, then it was $20, and we pay and we pay. Go look at the share price of Spotify. Go look at these companies are doing better than ever, and that's just entertainment. If we start talking about Marriott and Airbnb and Uber, everybody is really good at passing on those higher costs in the economy. And so it kind of like held together. It's not pleasant that you're paying, X dollars more at the grocery store. Nobody is suggesting that's a good thing. But what people don't want to hear, they say, oh, the inflation is terrible. You're the inflation. Look at the wage gains that you have. Look at for the majority of people, they all got giant raises, and they had to because there weren't enough people to work these jobs. So nobody wants to hear that they're the reason for the inflation, but we are our own inflation. We are the reason. People demanded more to come back to work, and that more resulted in higher priced airline tickets. It's not these two things are not divorced from each other. So that's one, and then the last piece of the puzzle here is we just got a report from the Federal Reserve 2 weeks ago. Guys, this is not my opinion. This is the data. U.S. household net worth just hit a new record, higher than before the pandemic. It's $160 trillion. And when I say net worth, that means netting out mortgages and credit card debt. Net worth, that's the wealth of the country minus debt, is $160 trillion. And 15 years ago, it was $60 trillion. So we've added $100 trillion in collective wealth. And this is not corporations. It's not insurance companies. I'm telling you that this is U.S. households. So that's why it's kind of all held together, because people might be mad at who the president is or their grocery bill. But in the end, collectively, we're doing pretty well.
Yeah, people aren't going to love that answer.
No, I know that. That's why.
Two, it's very easy to just look at your grocery bill. And like you said, I mean, some of the homeowners insurance stuff that's happening around the country in specific states. I mean, out here in California, you're lucky to get a policy on some of this stuff now. It's hard if you're at a certain level to even find somebody to write the policy.
Ryan, people are going to say, they're going to yell at you. Josh Brown's so out of touch. Do me a favor. Look at your grocery bill, but then right after, pop open your 401k statement. Just can you do that for me?
Right, but you're not wrong. No one's doing it. No one's processing it that way of going, okay, well, everything costs more, but if I'm doing, but because you're just going to look at your rent. You're going to look at your rent. You're going to look at all the things that you listed, and you're just going to say, well, the inflation doesn't make me feel like I'm doing better.
I know. And you know what?
I'm just obviously you understand human nature really well after reading the book. So
you're right. And by the way, this is why Biden was polling as low as he was, with an unemployment rate that was as low as 3.5% during calendar 2023. No president in history has ever had a stock market that has compounded at 15% a year, unemployment sub 4%. And had to fight for their life to get reelected. It's never happened before. So that's when we talk about unprecedented. People are doing better than they've done in the past, but social media tells them that they aren't. And they get pissed off by inflation, and rightfully so. I do too. And that's such a weird combination of things that we have going on right now. So that's why so much of this is uncharted territory. We've never experienced it before.
Yeah, because I hate the rando, and I'll suggest that it's even people in your industry at times, but I don't know that it's on TV as much. Maybe we'll get to that with some of the fund managers, because you make some good points with that when they decide to show up on TV, what that can mean. But when it's somebody's calling for Armageddon, and it's like, well, yeah, eventually you're going to be right. Cool, you're going to be right at some point, but you just keep calling it over and over again. And it's funny because even the jobs report, when that came out a couple months ago with a massive correction of where created jobs was off by, what was it, 800,000?
Yeah.
And then I thought, okay, I'm getting up, I'm checking the markets, and then like nothing happened.
Yeah.
So I feel like we have all of these events that have happened that everybody kind of feels a little bit. And then you're right. You look at your 401k, you look at your retirement stuff, and you're like, oh, okay, I guess everything's fine. It feels crazy.
Well, so let me address that quickly. We don't have to spend a lot of time in this, but that revision that you're referring to, people went on Twitter, which is like the repository for all this stuff, and they said, oh, here they go again. The Democrats are going to steal the election. Last year they tried to say that unemployment was this, but it's really that. There are constant revisions to economic data. This is not new. It's a large one, but again, I think the economy is much larger than ever, so it should be the largest revision ever. You have to remember there's a denominator. There was a 300,000 jobs revision for 2019 during the year 2020. We had to correct the record for 2019, and that's when Trump was president. So this is not like a partisan thing. Is a really important point. Although it was a large revision, I think the reason why there's a revision is important to just get into for a second. You've got the establishment survey, which is basically they call people and ask them, are you employed or not? It seems ridiculous, but that's how we collect data in this country. And then each state.
It sounds like old radio ratings.
Right. So, but
what did you listen to?
Yeah, what did you listen to? But when you get unemployment, you file with your state. So each state is keeping data, and that's not a survey. That's the actual data. So we don't get the state data as quickly as we get the survey result. So when you see the establishment survey come out, that's just people who answer landline phones. And then later they reconcile it with what each of the 50 states reports, which is actual. And then they say, this was off by 20,000, filers of unemployment. So that's why there's a discrepancy. It's not anyone trying to trick anyone else. It's literally the mechanics of collecting the information.
Yeah, I guess I just have such a lack of trust on either side of it. That,
I'm in on it.
Right. So I just like, because I read through it. I was sitting there going, how I want to understand this better. I want to understand this better. And then when you started seeing certain jobs being named new jobs that were created, and you were like, okay, but that doesn't make any sense. But then again, you dig into it a little bit deeper, and you kind of end up in this maze without an exit. All right, let me ask you this.
I won't tell you how they collect I won't tell you how the government says what rents are. They call people who own a home.
Well, you are, so let's do it.
And they ask. I wish I was making this up. If your listeners can Google this after they finish listening. They call people up and say, how much could you rent a spare room in your house for? That's the data. Now, I'm telling you, they've been doing this for 50 years. That's how they tell you what it's called owner's equivalent rent, or OER. That's the stat the Federal Reserve looks at to figure out like what inflation number to assign to apartment for like rental, like shelter costs. And then it's 2024, so we actually have real data, which comes from apartmentlist.com or one of the private companies, and they have the actual rents. So like this is another example of the collection method. It looks fake, it sounds fake, it sort of is fake. And then we can corroborate it with actual data from corporations, and you get the real number. But like that's why all these discrepancies exist, and they fuel conspiracy theories. You're right.
So you talked about Ackman at the very beginning of the pandemic, and he was really, really like convinced that everything kind of had to be shut down, like basically just a month of everything just stopping. And it was a big deal at the time. And it was probably the right strategy for him to get his message out there, because the White House is going to listen to a Bill Ackman. And you point out that, okay, now he's going to be doing TV for the first time. And you go through all the different cynical movements of what it could be. And you end up kind of at this conclusion that you believed him because of his investment moves.
Yeah.
And, I think everybody's conditioned to think, okay, well, why would this guy be doing this? What lesson, as somebody who has studied the markets, working, like you're a financial advisor, but on top of that, you're also a performer essentially, and you understand the television side of things.
Yeah.
Like, what is it? What alarms go off for you depending on who and what kind of message they're deciding to share at the time they're doing it?
All right. So you're talking about someone named William Ackman, Bill Ackman, who is a hedge fund manager and has been a very successful hedge fund manager, but a very polarizing hedge fund manager. He's had huge ups and downs in his career. He's had huge swings in whether or not people like him or hate him. But he's made a lot of money for himself. And he, during the height of the pandemic, like late March, he went on CNBC and he said, hell is coming. And he's highly influential. So a lot of people watch that and just say, I got to get out of the market. And so I think he didn't mean it. Hell is coming, therefore sell stocks. He was trying to get the attention of the authorities because he had this really strong opinion that what should happen is we should completely wholesale shut down society and literally close everything and just wait 2 weeks for the germs to die out and then reopen. But people took that as a sell signal because he's not Anthony Fauci. He's a hedge fund manager. So it turned out that he actually was buying stocks while he said that. And people assumed, oh, he must be shorting the market and trying to get everyone to be afraid. He did that already. He had put on a couple of $1 million worth of hedges that turned into a couple of $1 billion in profit using options. And he was not shorting the market while he said hell was coming. He was already in the process of bottom fishing and buying some of his favorite stocks, which include some companies that got really beaten up by the pandemic. So he not only was he not manipulating the markets or doing anything nefarious, but I think the lesson there is if you're literally taking investment advice from a hedge fund manager on TV, you might have brain damage. What gives you the idea that the hedge fund manager knows anything about you or has any vested interest in how your IRA does? Are you insane? Of course he's not giving you advice or telling you what to do. He's saying what he's doing and what he's thinking. So we run into this a lot. We talk to people. They're like, well, aren't you worried that so-and-so just said such and such? Oh, is that your financial advisor? Well, no. Okay. So it's people need to understand that others are allowed to have opinions without you construing it as oh, this guy's telling me what I should do.
Your career, in the beginning, and I understood this a little bit, I will talk about athletes and teams differently just because I'm older, right? But I also know I have way more access than I ever did before. And I would never say that if I like somebody or a GM or whatever, if I think somebody screws up, they screw up, and I still would be critical of it. But you have, that's just sports. You have a platform, but you're also managing your own employees. You're in charge of a lot of money.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of balance that. You have to be, it's very obvious that you have to be more responsible. You have to be more delicate. Although I would say in the beginning, you didn't worry about any of those things. How do you?
Yeah.
Because to me, it's I'm just talking about the outcome of games. You're talking about the viability of somebody's financial security. How do you handle that?
It's such a great point that you bring up. And I have a whole chapter just hey, when I was 33 years old and was a knockaround guy doing retail brokerage, I could throw bombs every day. The consequences were zero. So I could go on the blog and say, hey, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, and such and such person is a war criminal. And I could say whatever I want, and then what ends up happening is you build a following, and then the following translates into people really trust you, and they feel like you're a straight shooter, so they want to do business with you. And so now all of a sudden, right now I'm 47 years old, and I'm hopelessly conflicted because I'm in the real world. I'm in business. I'm doing TV. So I'm under contract with NBC Universal. I do live events. We had 4,000 people in Huntington Beach 2 weeks ago. My sponsors include Morningstar, Vanguard, State Street, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan. I have friends all over the industry that work at every firm. So I don't throw bombs anymore. Number one, I'm a little bit more mature. I've grown up. But number two, I have to look out for my clients. And like, that's like the number one thing now. So I'm very upfront about it. And I don't try to be the person that I was 15 years ago. It's like, look, this is my perspective now. Some of the rough edges have been smoothed away. I still tell it like I see it. I'm not going to bullshit somebody and say this is good if it's bad. But I'm also not going to go after someone personally because I disagree with their opinion about how to invest. I could just have a disagreement and it's respectful. And it's like, I don't think that what this guy's saying is correct, but God bless. So that's where I've arrived at. I think it's the right place to arrive at. And my favorite meme is Keanu Reeves, where he says, he's older than me. He's in his 50s, but he said, like, I've reached the age where I don't argue with anyone anymore. Somebody says 1 + 1 = 3. I say, great, have fun. So I'm not quite Keanu level, in terms of like, yeah, do whatever you want. But like, I'm heading in that direction. I don't get angry about people who disagree with me. I'm doing what I do, and it's fine.
No, you've hit on something I've been thinking more about too as I've gotten older. It's the ultimate power move to not care.
No, you can't rile me up about. No, I don't care.
Just go. Okay, cool, man. Like,
but can you imagine somebody's wrong on the internet, right? Seriously, I have a wife, I have kids, I have 65 employees, I have 4,000 clients, I have bills to pay. Somebody saying interest rates are going to go up when they go down, like I can't get angry about it. It's really hard to manufacture the rage necessary to take to the internet and have a flame war. I got to focus on the people that are relying on me, and that's the bottom line.
I'm telling you right now, you're going to enjoy the book. It's fun. It's not a textbook. You weren't supposed to see that. Josh Brown, and he is going to stick around later in the show and do some financial life advice for us on a Friday. The alliance is even stronger. It's great to see everybody. We saw each other in person. We got a little FaceTime in there. Guys saw Kyle in person in some of the Ringer pictures, and there is a lot of feedback that is positive.
Oh, really?
People love seeing that you're bigger than me.
Oh.
They love it. And then you throw Chris Long to the other side of me, they're like, this fucking guy works out. So anytime you can take a hit at the main character, say, people are going to just line up for that. So that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It was just
2 things too. There was an angle that people, I don't know if you saw this, you probably did, an angle of you in the jersey that people were screenshotting, and that was making the rounds. I saw, which
those
again,
aren't meant to be untucked without like a sweatshirt under it,
Yeah,
I don't
not
care.
fair.
I know what I look like with my shirt off.
Well,
and that's what matters.
I do too, because you went back after your open and I saw you with your shirt off as you were putting the jersey on or taking the jersey off. So that was fun. The other thing too is,
what'd you think?
I was, I don't know. That's what I expected.
I was just trying to be respectful, but I don't know. So I just wondered what you thought.
I thought it was, it was good. It was good. The other thing is, you guys are all tall, so I'm sitting there. And now I have dudes question whether or not I'm 5'10" or not after I just talked about the license thing. I'm not lying about it. I'm 5'10".
After
Chris
that picture,
6'4".
you have to put 5'9" down after that.
Nah, come on. Well, I didn't change.
I gotta put 5'11" maybe. So I mean, look, it sucks sitting next to huge guys. Like one night, I was with Chenoweth, who's a easy 7'2". Okay, Mikey. Watertown Whiskey Mikey, who's a monster of a dude, my guy down here at the beach. Big Cat, who's legit 6'4". And there was somebody else in the mix. And I was like looking around going, I got to get smaller friends.
That's why you keep me around.
Yeah, maybe Kyle, the reason we don't hang out is actually my issue with just going, I don't know. Because I mean, Kyle looked like twice the size of me, not just taller. So it was, but it was a great show. It was really a great, like, seriously, I'm not bullshitting anybody. I have such an appreciation for Philadelphia that I didn't have before. I just thought everybody was just a bunch of dicks. and had no reason to want to go there. And now with the museums alone, and everybody was so friendly, more people agreed with me on Embiid in person than online. I'm a little too online in my relationship with Philadelphia, so I think that's been a problem as well. I was like, does everybody think this way? And then I walk around, you're taking it in, constituent, it's everywhere, and you're just going, oh, everybody's more on the same page here? They're like, yeah, no way. The sampling of 4 people is inaccurate. So it was good to see Kyle. We had a beer together. That's the slight improvement.
And he bought me a fun bag of whatever that.
We went to the garage. Yeah, fun bags.
Neon Kool-Aid and vodka. Yeah.
Just a pouch of booze. As soon as we saw the fun bags, I was like, well, I'm not drinking one of those, but I'm getting one for Kyle. Although I could see myself like at a last call moment being like, fun bags for everybody.
Yeah, what's left? Can I tell you one thing before? Because I don't think I remember to tell you this story on next week. My Poughkeepsie guys moved the barricade and drove right up to the front of the theater when everyone was letting out. Just told everyone they were picking you up. I just thought that was a pretty cool move by them. I was like, how did you guys park here? Like, we said we were picking the podcast guy up. And they were like, Ryan? They're like, yeah. Get away from the car. Anyway, I just thought that was funny.
And Wargon was there too. So it was good.
I was also there.
Yeah. You enjoy it? Did you have a good time?
Great time, yeah.
Couple reebs later.
Got to meet everyone. Heck yeah.
Nice.
We're bearing the lead too, is that at that bar, we had trouble getting Chris in because he forgot his ID, and the bouncer didn't know who he was, which is like
super cop at the front door there.
They got Go Birds all over the walls. Have no idea who Chris Long is.
Like, to be fair, there's another version of that story where they felt like the inquiry into why Chris Long wasn't in there was a tad aggressive for their liking. So then the podcast dad had to go over and kind of smooth everything over. And then once the woman was like, I don't know who any of the people are that you're talking about. And I went, totally got it. And I was like, can I start over with me? And then the guy was like, oh, seriously? I was like, yeah, he's just right outside. Is that fine? And they were like, yeah, of course it is. Like, your approach was different.
I'm sorry.
And no,
Kyle gets excited.
Nobody was blaming
I was
anyone.
a little heated. I was like, wait a second.
I saw an angle of Kyle backstage while Chris Long was just randomly talking about something, and Kyle was backstage cheering, like going like this. That's how excited he was for any former Patriot to be within arm's length of him. Okay, now with the vibes being maybe the best they've ever been in 24, let's talk Alliance. Recap, Ceruti.
Well, Kyle and I were kind of jabbing last week, and rightfully so, we both lost. We went 2-2. You and Wargon won.
How the turntables.
Yeah, so that's what we deserve. It's fine. Got a little mouthy. You are all 3-2 on the season. I am 2-3. Again, we're taking some alt spreads, so me being 2-3 is actually quite embarrassing. But feeling good about a bounce back week here. So we haven't yet to hit one, but we're getting into the territory where, like, if we hit one, we're still going to be in the money. But we can't wait too much longer.
So sad.
Let's stop waiting then. Let's go.
Seize the day. Let's go.
I want you to lead us off.
I'm leading off. All right. I'm going all over 41.5, Ohio State, Iowa. Iowa's actually got like a bit of an offense this year. Their biggest weapon is in the punting game. So Ohio State hasn't really had to open it up yet, but maybe this is the game. So over 41.5.
Okay. Love it.
I guess I'll go. I'm going to take another over. I'll go Virginia Tech, Stanford. I'm going to take the over 45.5 there. Every Stanford game has gone over this total this season. All but one Virginia Tech games have gone over this total this year, and the one that didn't was missed by a half point. I love Kyron Drones, motivated after the Miami game, and I think Stanford probably runs all over them. I like points here.
I like Drones too. I liked him in the Vandy game. Like early on, I went, hey, I kind of like watching this guy. Yeah.
So I have my dynasty in NCAA 25 is Virginia Tech, and he's awesome to play with. So I kind of am I'm kind of a Virginia Tech fan these days.
You're a sneaky Virginia Tech guy?
Yeah, what's up?
Wow. That is, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, wouldn't tag me for one, but yep.
I call you twice a day. Okay, if we're going by height, I'll go third here. I'm ready for the Tennessee breakout game. I mean this from like just a Nico Iamaleava freak show type of game. And that's kind of what I'm looking at here against Arkansas. Now, if you look at the defensive ranking numbers, and if you go yards per play, which is probably the best thing to look at here, although the strength of schedule, opponents kind of quality, it's all over the place as well. Arkansas is middle of the pack in college football. Tennessee, by the way, is a half a yard better than any other team in college football. as far as opponents' yards per play. They're 2.8. Ohio State's 3.3 with different schedules, by the way, in that. Although I wouldn't say Oklahoma's offense exactly look crazy when you're benching your quarterback at halftime. So I believe the line, Ceruti, right now, the live line is Tennessee at Arkansas minus 14.5. So within the parameters of what we need to do to keep it a plus 400, can I get it to minus 9.5?
9.5. Yep.
Okay.
That's what you got.
Tennessee minus 9.5. And I think for a Nico Heisman maybe push here. Arkansas is not very good. They're not a disaster. They were in it with A&M. The Oklahoma State game is incredibly frustrating. So it's kind of a bigger number for a team that you may think is worse if you haven't. And I don't expect anyone to have been watching them necessarily, but I'm waiting on this moment from Nico to really light up offensively, and we haven't had it yet. Kyle?
All right. Well, last week I tried to connect the two branches of college football and college basketball. We did our ACC preview. I'm not going to do that. We just did our Big East preview with the one and only John Fanta, and I'm not going to take UConn just because of that. I'm going to take Georgia at home. So I think we're going to try to go a little safer. So Rudy managed me. He kind of the odds gatekeeper. He told me I could not do minus 16.5 at minus 220. So I'm going to do. Can I? Then I'll do that.
Me, Wargon, and Ryan, our bets are all in the minus 170 range. Kyle comes in with a hot minus 220. So his bet is a little bit
we were
less
trying to win these
than
guys,
ours.
but that's all right.
We are, but you go ahead. Do your thing.
All right, then I'll do the thing. I'm gonna die on the hill now. The cameras are on. So minus 16.5, Georgia at home versus Auburn.
Good luck with trying to figure out any Auburn week. But I like the bounce back emotionally. Like if Georgia's even close to who we think they are, can they put it on Auburn? I kind of hate my pick, to be honest with you, because Arkansas could be 5-0. The Oklahoma State thing was a disaster, and they fumbled the ball. I think they were -3 in turnovers last week against A&M. So Arkansas actually is probably better, and the number. I'm actually talking myself into just I don't even want an alt line. Give me Arkansas plus.
Don't be afraid to fade yourself.
Have I ever done that? Where they're can I get Arkansas plus 20 actually? But no, I'm going to stay with the initial thought plan on this one. But as I started thinking about it, I go, this is a really stupid sucker type bet. Hey, Nico needs to throw touchdowns, so he's going to throw a lot in Arkansas. So let's go.
They're like their jerseys, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, wait a minute. You kind of take it easy on the vibe influence on some of the picks. But yeah, mine's a loser pick, but I'm going with my gut. I'm not going to change my gut. So I hate my pick. All right, let's get the picks.
I thought we said vibes were high. Apparently they're
vibes are high. Vibes are high collectively. But when I went from hanging out, well, it was tough. It was a weird 36 hours for me. I was hanging out with people. I was like, look at all of these people. 1,000 people.
Camaraderie? What is this?
Yeah, you won't see 1,000 people one-on-one in the next 2 years. So, by the way, I had the worst insomnia / nightmares. I'm not a dream recap guy, but holy fuck. I had 1-2 beers. I don't even remember. I think I had 1 or 2 beers that night. So I had nothing to do with that. If I took you through the recap of the dreams that I had that night in a Philadelphia hotel room, and I couldn't sleep. So I think it was like an insomnia-induced thing. Are we still taping? All right, let's get to it. Couch money research. So last week, Ceruti, it was a 1-1-1.
Yep.
Did I
still looking for your first W? You did.
I know. This has been terrible. Okay. All right. So the couch is, and I'll get the latest stuff here to make sure. Give me Cleveland plus 3.5 at Washington. This Commanders thing's a little too hot right now. Okay. It's just a little too hot. I originally was going to go with, when I saw the matchup of Dallas and Pittsburgh, I go, oh, wait, everybody's writing off Dallas. People are probably overrating Pittsburgh a little bit, even though their defense is insane. But is it actually a bad matchup with Dallas' defense? Maybe it is. I don't know. And I kind of like Dallas in this one. And then I realized it was one of the most public plays that everybody was thinking all the things that I was thinking about. So the couch pick of watching all the games on the couch, give me Cleveland plus 3.5. The biggest public play as of right now are the Vikings, who were +4 on the open and are now -2. So the other biggest public play was Cowboys plus 2.5 at Pittsburgh. I was actually going to do that one from the couch, but since it was so public, then I was just going to stay away from it. So let's do this. Let's go Jets +3 is the latest number that I have as of right now to fade the public. And then the research pick right now is Cincinnati at home against the Ravens plus 2.5. So as of right now, final overall standings, Ceruti, the research has been the best so far, correct?
3-1. Yep.
So the sharp, not sharp number that we get each week is 3-1. Fading the public on the biggest public plays is 1-3.
Yeah, public's been hot this year. It's
Yep. No, it has. You're right. And then Russillo getting his ass kicked. I'm just going to stop watching games and do who needs it more and whose team is it segments on Monday. All right. All right. That's the Alliance, man. Check it all out. FanDuel, the best sports book you can find online.
You want details? Fine. I drive a Ferrari 355 Cabriolet. What's up? I have a ridiculous house in the South Fork. I have every toy you can possibly imagine. And best of all, kids, I am liquid. So, now you know what's possible. Let me tell you what's required.
Okay, Josh is with us. Life advice, rr@gmail.com. Let's run through a bunch of these. And chances are I'm laying out on most of this, so we can probably get through a few. Okay, here's one. Am I doing this right? 27 years old, 5'10", 185. If we're going to give you the comps, Josh. Max Strus NBA comp, but not the Heat playoff version. That guy was good. I'll keep it short and sweet. I'm curious if I'm doing the whole finances thing correctly. I've largely done what I've done financially outlined below based on cherry picking advice from my far smarter finance graduate friends. Context, 27 years old, living in a major city, making $130,000 a year in the sales role. Rent is running me $1,800 a month plus utility. $1,800 in a major city. You'd probably start off with a good start already. No credit card debt, no student loans, $30,000 in high yield savings account that was adjusted to 4.1. So that just happened. $30,000 in individual stock portfolio, mostly in ETFs, $11,000 in a Roth IRA with $3,000 more planned to allocate and max out this year, $21,000 in a 401k account. I'm doing 6% an employer match, $23,000 in RSUs with my company that vest over the next 4 years. Can I be doing more? Should I move some of these assets around? What advice would you give me?
So the only thing I would take issue with is the 30% in cash. If you don't have plans to use that right away, maybe you don't need as big of an emergency fund. At 27, it sounds like there's no dependence in the situation. There's no like real estate ownership. It's not like, oh, the roof is leaking and I have no emergency, right? So I think that's probably the only very, very minor thing I would bring to the table is just say, like, do you really need that much earning 4%? Because when you invest in stocks, you're shooting for a longer term average annual return of 7 or 8%. And in the last couple of years, it's actually been double that. So are you underinvested in the equity market given your age and your lack of need for current income on that cash? 4% is great, but remember, inflation is 3%. So you're really making 1% in real terms. And you're too young to be okay with 1%.
By the way, at 27, I think you're doing great, man.
100%.
One thing that I would add that's, I think, a general question for all of us is there's probably nothing that CPAs love more than when a client comes in being like, I saw this tax hack on Instagram where I can rent my house to my own LLC. Or so, and every good tax attorney is like, stop it. There's been a lot of momentum lately when you look at the returns. If you were to keep all of your money, not invest in a 401k, even with the match part of it, it just felt like the popularity of the long-term 401k versus just investing as a single investor in the returns, that there seemed to be momentum for that. How do you feel about that?
Well, you can speculate better outside of the 401k structure. So if a lot of this is like in hindsight and it's outcome oriented. So like if I said to you 10 years ago in 2014, you should put all of your money into a 401k that you can to maximize the amount of taxable income you're not being taxed on. And you should allocate stock market and, just don't touch it, leave it alone. That would have been good advice. You would have done really well. But if you were weighing that versus buying Bitcoin, which in 2014 was, I don't know, I'm going to say probably $300, then I look like an asshole in hindsight for having told you, no, don't buy Bitcoin, idiot. Allocate to the 401k, max out. You would have said 10 years later, you gave me bad advice. So a lot of this is outcome oriented, because you also could have taken that money and bought a penny stock that went to zero. And then you would have said, Josh, I should have listened to you. So for most people, the standard advice is still the right advice. There's a reason it became the standard advice. And the standard advice is defer spending today so that your capital can grow and you can afford to live in the more expensive world of tomorrow. And the more money you put into a vehicle like the 401k, the better, not just because it's going to grow in concert with the stock market, but because you literally can't touch it. And this is a powerful thing behaviorally, to take yourself out of the equation, so to speak. It's not a brokerage account. You can't just log in and pull it out anytime you want to use it on a bachelor party. So I still think that's the right advice. I'm not saying there's like no possible way you can do better outside of that. I'm saying the pros outweigh the cons of just getting that money somewhere where you can't mess with it and let the magic of compounding work without your involvement.
I like that. Okay, 6 foot 200 Tyronn Lue, but too often get called into being Iverson at pickup when I have bad teammates. Okay, I like this title. It's Investing While Poor. His word. I live in a low income neighborhood. I'm financially responsible. I have some savings I'd like to invest. While fractional ownership via stocks or index funds get the return, I want to invest in my local businesses, all caps. I don't have enough money to start a business, but just want to feel the ownership vibe and put some sweat equity into the business to help be successful. I want to be on those investor calls or see myself in the owner's box. What are the mechanisms for this? I'd invest in old or new businesses, not just for the return. This is money I'd be willing to lose.
This is the number one thing that when we talk to people in their 20s, we really try to hammer home. We have people in their 20s ask us about their asset allocation, or is Google better than Meta? Like going into the earnings. It's like, dude, the number one thing you want to do at the stage of the game that you're at right now is double and triple down on you. The income that you yourself can earn is going to dwarf anything that happens with your investments. It is the most important investment you can make. You don't need to buy a fractional share of Apple. You need to take that money and put it toward an advanced degree or a professional designation that allows you to earn a higher income, or use it to travel and go to networking events for the industry that you want to be in. Use it to take a very successful person that you have access to out to dinner and ingratiate yourself with people who can help your career. That's how you're supposed to be investing in your 20s. Anything that's not 401k, and part of like a corporate retirement plan. I don't think Gen Z people right now should be like overly focused on what stocks they're trading. I think they should be focused on how they make it so that they can earn a 7-figure income. 7-figure income is going to be mandatory if you want to have a upper middle class or higher lifestyle 10 years from now. That's where it's going. Don't get mad at me for being the person that's saying it to you. I'm telling you, based on the cost of living, you want to be in Chicago, New York, LA, Miami. You want to have a garage where you can park your car, luxury apartment. You want to have a lifestyle where you could be in the Hamptons, or you can be in Vegas with your buddies or whatever. Like, that's rapidly approaching. It's going to take like 7 figures a year, 10 years from now, 15 years from now. You got to make it so that you have the capability of earning enough income to be part of that. You don't have to worry about what stocks to buy. So I think that's a really great question. And I think the right answer is bet on you, invest in you. You'll have plenty of time to be old like me in my 40s and worried about what stocks to own.
Great answer. I'd add one little thing that whenever I hear about somebody, like, they didn't prioritize sweat equity over money in this email in particular, but I think for other people and other experiences where it's like, yeah, I'd love to get involved, or I can make calls, or I can do this, or I can help this stuff, right? The people that put their money in are never going to look at you as a partner. They're just not, unless your brand is so valuable, which would then mean like, why, there's certain people that are at a level where their attachment to something then brings in something that feels like quantifiable. But the local business getting started, and think how hard it was for them to get the first shovel into the ground, and like you being around and all that kind of stuff. But my experience has been the people that put the money in don't even look at you as anything close to an equal.
One other thing on that, and I spent a lot of time with people in their 70s and 80s who are extraordinarily wealthy. And when you and like not trust fund people, like people that earned it. And when you ask them like what their fondest memories are from their career, or you ask them like what was the best, you assume they're going to tell you this story of the first time they got a 7-figure, bonus, or the first time they made $1 billion on a trade, or it's never that. It's always these stories about, man, we had a ping pong table instead of a desk, and we would work till 9 o'clock at night, and we would scrounge enough money together for a pizza, and we would just be on the phones working, or we would just be grinding out spreadsheets, or like whatever that is. Like those are the stories that they have this like golden glow in their mind's eye. And that's like, so this idea of like sweat equity, like this is going to be a miserable time in your life. This is going to be the stories that you tell when you're fabulously rich and successful, about like when you had nothing. How many stories from billionaire people start with, I had nothing. They smile when they tell that story of how they got started, and you will too. So yeah, do the sweat equity part. Don't worry about the capital investment. Invest your whole being, body, mind, and soul. It's so much more important.
Okay, a couple more here. What should I do with a lump sum of cash? I think this plays for a lot of people. Situation for Josh. Through my efforts at work, I'm going to soon receive a cash sum of about twice my annual salary. Some people have a bonus-heavy or results-based pay structure all the time, but a one-time large amount like this is very unusual for me and may not happen again. He said his income is in the $220,000 a year range. So he doesn't say what the lump sum will be, but he says later on that's what his salary is. So I think that's important for Josh to kind of understand. So
buy a house.
All right. So
buy a house.
Look, he wants to give us a little background here because he's got some dependents here, a wife and 4 kids. So I got to imagine he's probably on the low end if he got started real early, mid-30s, maybe mid-40s, maybe in that range. I would describe what I have as a starter home in an expensive area with a big mortgage, but a low interest rate. I have some back taxes to pay, 1 large credit card. My only other debt is a large student loan on income-based repayment. My wife would really like a new car. I'm self-employed, like we said, income 120 to 220 range. I'm way behind on retirement savings.
Buy a house because you have 4 kids already, so it's too late. So you have to enjoy the life that you're living with them. So if you're in a starter home, sell the starter home, wipe out your debt, make a down payment on a bigger house. The real estate is not going to appreciate at the same rate. Home prices, like not in the last 3 years, but just generally 50 years, 75 years, home prices appreciate on average. This is a national average between 1% and 2%. Now, of course, there's a lot of variation in different regions, but don't worry about that. You're not going to look at the house as an investment. You're going to look at it as a form of consumption. It may end up being a good investment. It's probably not going to materially outpace the rate of inflation, but it's not the point. You have a family, you have 4 kids. The memories that you're making right now are like the most core important memories of your entire life. So enjoy it. And the way to enjoy it is, I think, not to have that lump sum, sitting in S&P fund. You'll do that over time as you save more for retirement. You're in the consumption years. Anyone that has kids right now understands what I'm saying. These are not necessarily the best investing years. They're the best consumption years. So I would say use that to upgrade the housing situation and wipe out some of those debts and back taxes and things. And that'll be a really great investment spiritually, probably financially too, but later. That's where I would go with that.
You're right. I'd say like the 7 or 8 markets that I'm monitoring, and I get the Zillow alerts, every projection 1 year from now is a growth of 1 to like 1.7%. And I'm like, I feel like this is kind of just the same formula. over and over and over.
You talk to people out, Ryan, people are our parents' age, and they're like, I bought this house for, $70,000 cash. And they think they've made this amazing investment. And then you run the numbers. It's like, all right, let's pretend you didn't put $1 into the house since.
Because some guys, sometimes it might be accurate.
Yeah.
But
let's pretend it's the shag carpeting and the same wallpaper from the 70s. Let's regress the number and let's see like what your actual CAGR is for the house. And it's like, oh, you actually did terribly. That's like when they say so-and-so is a billionaire. Yeah, but like if he just bought the S&P 500 rather than, did all these dumb investments, he would be up 10x. So it's the home is consumption. It may end up being a good financial decision too, but it's definitely a good personal decision.
Okay, last one. This one says, I host a sports talk show, but I'm addicted to day trading, signed RR 2014.
So, I mean,
that was me. Yeah. But I think there's a lot of guys right now that there's nothing funnier than going back and thinking about my buddies right after college that were like, dude, I'm kind of good at it. I was like, you're good at it. And then they were never good at it. Yeah. I keep right now a little account myself, but it's just to feel it. It's just to say, I think that's way too low. I'll buy it. I'll sit on it or whatever. It's money that is not important to me.
Yeah.
Which is, working this long. I'm lucky enough to be able to say something like that. But for the people out there that think that this is viable, because we got a lot of emails on that, all these people and their strategies and everything.
There's an apocryphal study that Fidelity did years and years and years ago. It's disappeared from the internet, which leads some people to believe that it never existed, but I know it did. And they were looking to see which of their account holders had the best returns. And then they were going to try to figure out why. Like, what are these investors doing that all the other investors aren't?
It's like Icelandic banking before the collapse.
Yeah.
Why are these guys so good at it?
Yeah. So basically the conclusion of the study was these are people who forgot they had an account here. These people never logged in. So
that's beautiful.
So
that's perfect.
I can't prove that I've seen this, but I know 10 people who will swear to God that they've seen it also. And it's gone because it works contra to the interests of the industry. And everyone swears it doesn't exist, but directionally, it's probably right. The less you do, the better. Now, here's a caveat. You absolutely should keep a trading account. It's how you learn how the world really works. It's how you learn businesses. It forces you to listen to conference calls and pay attention to prices and trends and attitudes. It makes you just a sharper, better business person to have a few stocks in a portfolio and quote unquote manage them. So I'm not one of these doctrinaire people that's like, just index, why would you do anything else? No, most of what you do should be passive, but then like keep a hand on it and stay connected to the markets. I think it's good for everyone, no matter what you do. So
I think if you're a certain point too, and it's not going to ruin your life, to have a little rainy day number in there that's not even in anything, waiting for the next correction, waiting for any kind of news. Like that's when I think it gets fun. Like I started getting to a point where I was like, if I see a bunch of headlines that feel like they're super targeted to try to take down a company that I still think is a real viable company, then I'll just wait around. I'll just wait around for like what I think are a dumb 24-hour news cycle of headlines.
Just this year, Starbucks collapsed from 100 to like the 60s. And then they brought in the guy from Chipotle, like the genius who turned Chipotle into the most valuable quick service restaurant in the world after McDonald's to run Starbucks. The stock went up 25% in like one day. You got to be in this game. That's
the only thing I've learned that after getting my ass kicked, for all of those years and watching you guys be like, "Ooh, that sounds interesting." Chinese lumber, you know what I mean? And you're like, "I'm in," and I'm like, that makes a ton of sense. Look at the square footage. So
you got to be in the game.
Because I still love being in it. I need that juice.
I'm with you,
but it is not even close to impacting the long-term bottom line, and it's a fading the public headlines. And it really kind of like is a lot like sports, where I think of how the NFL is talked about on a Monday and then everybody's kind of settled down by Thursday.
Yeah.
Like the outcomes that were so important and meant everything and was going to direct the path of the rest of the season. And then on Thursday, everybody's kind of over it. And then once I started noticing these things that were happening in your world, I go, it's the exact same thing.
It's this.
So
it's like
right.
You have the program director of the TV network is like steering the tenor of
segments.
Conversation
right
in one direction, and then everyone gets bored of it, and then it's like starts swinging back the other way, and nothing's changed. It's like nothing's changed except what
it's the only thing I've been able to figure out.
Well,
I go, everybody cares
I'm here to
so
confirm.
much about this outcome, this headline on Monday, and then the market reflected it because everybody else was at home watching it all. And then by Thursday, like it'll have, and look, you gotta have something that you like and you believe in, which you could still be wrong, get hit enough that you feel like it's on sale all of a sudden. But it's actually been a better strategy than anything I've ever been.
The Knicks trade this weekend, they announce it. Knicks fans are furious. Then the next day, day two, it's like, actually, it was the only move. And then like 2 days later, it's like, oh my God, we just did the best trade ever. So it's the same thing in invest. You're 100% right. It's because we're all people. It's not different people.
Yeah. Now you can really get into the human nature stuff, which I love too. Look, I love the book. Last quick question. Would Nancy Pelosi be the best fund manager if she were not in politics?
Well, if she were not in politics, that would dry up the source of her alpha. So no.
You caught that. Very good answer.
It was like almost a logic question.
You weren't supposed to see that, Josh Brown. There's so much more in there. And I think the most important thing, if this is not something you're intimidated by, I'm intimidated by it all the time, right? I know what I know in sports and I think about these other topics and I go, I'm just not there, right? But the motivation to want to read something like this and to start thinking like that, to me, is the first step of ever figuring anything out, that you actually are aware that you want to learn more about something that is incredibly important. So, like I said, I love the format. I love the way you laid it all out, and I'll continue to be a fan. So thanks, Josh.
Ryan, thank you so much. Appreciate it.